Hey,
Okay,
Well,
we're good.
Steve, I'm going to hand it off to you. Welcome, Terry. Um, we're really excited to have you today. And I'm going to hand it off to Steve to do the formal introductions.
thank you.
Okay, it is a delight to welcome Terry Odell to be our speaker this afternoon. Of all things, I came across Terry on Facebook with her word of the day, which is to me just intriguing. It's one thing I look forward to on Facebook on a near daily basis. But Terry is an author of I'm looking at the 4 series that you're working on now, and if I count this up right, you've had 30 books in those 4 series. She has the tagline on her website of romance with a twist of mystery. So I thought, in addition to the issues about presence on social media, that she'd be wonderful to talk about merging genres and how all of that works. So we'd like to welcome Terry. And if I can, I would just want to start with a question for you, just to basically give us a little bit about your background, the type of things that you're writing, and the how you got into this thing.
Okay. I have a very boring existence. I was raised in Los Angeles by 2 parents. My mother is still living at 96. They were married forever. I've been married forever. Uh, School, no aspirations. I'm just old enough so that it was sort of like when I turned 21, my dad said, "When your mom was your age, you were born. Are you dating yet?" Because that was the goal. You just got married and had a family. So careers were very rare for women at that time. So I just muddled along and I got married and I had 3 kids and I taught school for a while. I sold Tupperware for a while. I did tutoring for a while. No aspirations to be a writer. I'm not one of those people on the panel that says, I wrote my first story in crayon when I was 5. I had an AARP card that had been used many times before I even thought about writing. Uh, when I got into it, it was just, I ran out of room for needlepoint and it beat cleaning toilets.
Okay, so what prompted you when you said you already used your AARP card? So what struck the fire that this is something I want to do, or I want to try anyway?
Yeah, it was a slow, smoldering fire. My son came home to visit, and he was doing the guy thing, holding the remote and flipping through TV channels. And he stopped on one and said, "Oh, this is a cool show. It's about these immortals that can't die unless you cut off their heads." And that was about it. And so I wanted to be the cool mom. So I looked it up and it was Highlander and it was in syndicated reruns that came on at like 2 in the morning. So I set the VCR and I taped a few shows to watch them because every mom wants to be able to converse with their kids. And it wasn't hard to watch Adrian Paul. I will admit to that. That was easy and cool. And through that, I started finding Highlander sharing things. I mean, the web was CompuServe in those days, and there was a Highlander fan group, and I found out about fan fiction, and I started reading these fan fiction things that people were posting. And one weekend, I had I guess you'd call her a friend. I didn't know her other than through the fiction. I liked her stuff. If I knew then what I know now, it would be I liked her voice. But I was home alone for a weekend and I said, well, can I write one of these? And I wrote a short little story thing and I sent it to Sandra. And she came back and edited it for me. And she says, you can't have more than one point of view in in a scene, much less a paragraph. And it became a challenge. It was just like, okay, can I do this? Can I learn a new skill? And it was fun. And then she made me post it to the Highlander board, and people were saying they liked it. If I knew again how low the bar was for people saying they liked it, I might have quit then too. But I just kept going. I ran into some friends at a meeting in Orlando, and they were writers going back to school to become writers. These were women doing a special course of study at Rollins College, I think it was. And so we met, and I got the advantage of all their expertise without ever having to pay a dime in tuition. And it just was really cool. And one of the members of that group was really, you're going to start submitting, you're going to start submitting. And I go, I don't know. And she says, you're going to start submitting. So I got into it that way. But by then the fire was lit. I was just going to write. It didn't matter what I was writing or if anybody bought it or anything like that. I just wanted the challenge. And from the fan fiction, I wanted to say, well, can I write my own characters? And so I started with that. So that's basically how it started.
Okay, I have a question. It's not
Sure.
on my cheat sheet here that we exchanged, but because we had a husband and wife as our speakers last month, and they talked about how he was involved in her writing. What'd your husband think when you took up this new adventure?
He thought it was cute. He did offer, at the beginning, I think the first time I wrote a scene in, I guess it was Finding Sarah. I was actually, writing what I considered then a real book. It had real characters. It was all my story. There was, no fan fiction in it. And I handed him the scene that I wrote from the male's point of view. I said, you're a guy. I'm not. Did I get this right? And so our offices were separated, our bedrooms in the house we used as offices, by a Jack and Jill bathroom. So if we had the doors open, we could shout back and forth to each other. And so he's sitting there in his chair and he hollers out, he needs a bigger truck. I didn't know vehicles, I still don't, but I had given him what we had, which was a, good grief, I can't even remember, a little Ford or a little Honda, a small truck. He says, give him a Ford F-150. So I said, okay, that's, type replace. And I changed whatever I had him driving into an F-150. And about 20 minutes later, he comes in and he's hanging in the doorway. And he says, you know that part where she's sitting on the couch and she tucks her legs up? I said, yeah. He'd have looked. So,
Yep.
She was wearing a skirt. She sat on the
Yep.
couch. And, and I was talking to another guy that I was working with at the time, and I said that. And he goes, oh my God, that's hardwired in us. Of course he'd look.
Yeah.
So I used him more as a consultant. He still will read my stuff as it comes off the printer, which is in his office. When it becomes a real book, he's not all that much interested anymore.
Okay.
But if I need help, he's a scientist, and if I can say to him, I need a way to poison a cat, and his eyes light up, and he goes, ciguatoxin. So
Excellent. So
yeah.
let's start a little closer to the end.
Okay.
Or move a little closer to the end. So tell us about cruising undercover.
Okay. I don't know. I can't see me except up in that little thing. So you'll
Yeah.
have to tell me if I don't know how to.
Hold it a little bit higher. Your book. There we go.
Okay. Because I don't know how you set this up as to whether I can
Oh, you're
see.
great. We
Yep.
can see it.
Okay. This started off because my son is a photographer and he makes his living, questionable as it may be at times, doing photo instructional tours. And some of them are international. And I had gone on a number of them with him. And he was going to go to Croatia. And I go, that sounds really cool. And my husband says, no, it's just buildings. What can you take pictures of? He went to Panama instead. So I went to Croatia, and I realized that in order to write off the cost of your travel, you need to produce something. So I had already done this with our 50th anniversary tour to the British Isles. I wrote Heather's Chase, which followed in the footsteps. I thought I could get away with just, oh, cute little romance thing, crank it out in half the time that my mysteries take. And I couldn't. I got 3 chapters in and I said, there has to be a mystery. So I am a mystery writer somewhere down deep in there. So I wrote the Croatia book, partly motivated because that was a damned expensive trip. And it becomes fun. And the challenge there is to not make it a travelogue, to make it an actual story with conflicts. And then things that you have to take into account are, if you're an American in Croatia and there's a crime involved, you're not involved. The cops take over, or whatever the authorities are. There's nothing you can do. So that's always been the challenge. I set a mystery on a cruise ship. I did this, British Isles tour, and unless it's my Blackthorn series where those guys can go anywhere and do anything, which is why Cruising Undercover became a Blackthorn book and not a standalone international mystery. I just like, they need this piece of equipment, I'll give it to them. They need to be able to hack into that database. They got hackers. So that was easy. But Cruising Undercover, it just happened, first of all, because I had to write the book. And then once I start, because I'm not a plotter, it just takes off. Is that okay?
You said you're excellent. You say you're not a plotter. So pantser versus planner, which one are you, and how do you work out?
I'm a plantser at this point. When I started out, I was a pure pantser. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was writing a mystery. My kids told me it was a romance. I'd never read a romance. I didn't know how I could possibly be writing a romance. So I started, looking into that side of things. But I start with characters. Usually I may have a situation. In a mystery, it's very basic. What's the crime going to be? And they're going to solve it at the end. And then you just fill in all the blanks. With a romantic suspense, you have to add you need a hero and a heroine. And in addition to solving some kind of problem, they're going to have to fall in love and have the potential for a happily ever after. So I just, I tried plotting. I got the board and I got everything, and I could do 3 chapters. And that was it. I can't be farther ahead than 3 chapters.
So when you start a story, do you know where it's going to end?
Well, if it's a mystery, it's going to end with a solution. And if it's a romance, it's going to end with a happily ever after. But no, I don't know who the bad guy is. People are shocked. What shocks me is somebody says, oh, I've got 3 chapters left to go in my book. And I go, well, how do you know? I don't know when it's going to end until it ends.
So tell us about your writing process. How do you go about this? How many days a week do you write? What is your normal, if there is a normal day? How does it work?
Okay. I don't know. I never know where to start this with the end, if I start at night, or if I start first thing in the morning. In the morning, and I get up, do my usual, check my email and all that stuff. My fingers will not type in the morning. I can barely do the New York Times mini crossword without 17 typos in each word. So I take care of all of that stuff. Then when I'm ready to start writing, it's what I printed out from the night before. So if I start the night before, I have in hand, in bed, a printout of the scene or the chapter that I finished most recently. And I read that in a totally different environment. I read it in hard copy, so it fools the brain. And I make little markups. I don't proofread it and stuff. I'll circle a typo, or I'll put a little note that I can't keep track of who the characters are. And that's usually my biggest problem, is shoving in too many pronouns, because I know who they are. But when I read it again several hours later, I've forgotten, I can't tell who's speaking. So that's my first step in writing, is to go mark up my transcript into the document. And that gives me a running start. And I may continue throughout the day. My goal is 1,000 words. And I don't stop when I hit it if it's early, but I'm satisfied. So if I've finished my main stuff and it's noon, fine. If it's 7:30, my best writing seems to come in the late afternoon when the day is behind me. There's nothing more that's going to interrupt me. I don't need to worry about somebody sending me an email or any of that kind of stuff. And I'm by then caught up in the story again. So I try to write every day because, like I said, otherwise I have to do housework and I don't like that. So if I'm writing, that's the other thing about my husband. If I tell him I'm busy, I'm writing, especially when the checks started coming in, he says, okay, go for it. And he'll leave me alone.
Do you rewrite as you go?
Yes. Yeah, I've printed that. Well, first off, I'm rewriting constantly because I touch type, so I'm seeing the words as they appear on the screen, and I move things around and I chop them up and I go back. But I have that printout. And if one of my notes says fix this, I do, because I would rather fix one chapter than 49 chapters.
So do you use any special programs? I mean, there's some people like to use, I like to use Scrivener, but other people have different things that they like. Or do you just sit down with Word and your
I
computer?
use Word. I have used it for so long. I am too old to learn new tricks. I have tried Scrivener. I've taken classes from the woman who wrote Scrivener for Dummies, and I cannot get into it.
It's a pretty steep learning curve.
Right. And I don't have time for that. And I could finish the book before I could figure out how to use Scrivener. And then everybody is saying, well, I write it in Scrivener and then I copy it into Word. And I go, well, why? You know, if it's in Word to begin with, I don't have to worry about messing anything up. So it's an ongoing process. I think, I can't remember, but I think it was Linda Howard says that she calls her process zigzag stitching, because she writes forward and then she backs up and fixes and then she moves a little bit forward. So by the time I get to the end, I've got a fairly clean manuscript. I do have critique partners and I give them chapters at a time. That's how we work. It's all online. And so I'll take their comments into consideration too. And if they say, you're going off the deep end here, I'll regroup and rethink.
Okay, let's start, go back to your first novel or your first novels. How long did it take you? Did you hit success with the first novel, or did it take a couple, or how did
Okay, well, how are you defining success?
Well, let's talk about success in two ways.
Okay.
One is getting published, and then the second is getting published and making money, enough money so that you can write off stuff when you travel.
Okay. The first real novel that I wrote was Finding Sarah, and it was the first novel that was published. It was not an overnight thing. I had gone the traditional route. I found an agent. She was shopping at, no, I think I didn't have an agent then. I couldn't get one. So this was probably early 2000s. And I was submitting, and then all of a sudden, e-publishers happened. And this was not Amazon. This is not KDP. This was e-publishers. And they got their start with Elora's Cave, who is known or was known because they published erotica. And ebooks were the perfect way for women to read, and men, but to read erotica, because you downloaded it onto your PDA and you read it privately, and you didn't have to go stand in line at the bookstore with that hot cover and find out that the clerk is somebody you taught in junior high. So there were several of them popping up, and I submitted to a couple. One said, oh, this one will take anything. And I go, well, they rejected me, so it's not quite anything. But Elora's Cave was starting a mainstream imprint called Caradwin Press. And they were looking for basic romantic suspense, not erotic stuff. And they accepted Finding Sarah. And I had nothing to lose at that time. So I said, okay. And they had a fairly decent contract for non-erotic writers because they had no clue that they weren't going to attract the audience that they had with their erotica. And so there was a very low ceiling of you have to, sell this many copies in a year or you can get the rights back. So, there was that safety net behind you. And they did 3 of my books. And I met an editor who I didn't know was an editor. So this is the way to do an elevator pitch. Be standing there waiting for the elevator at a writer's conference. And what are you going to talk to the other person who's standing at the elevator? Hi there, you having fun? What do you write? And so he asked me what I wrote and I started to describe it. He got in the elevator as I had finished. As he was getting in, he hands me his card and said, come up and talk to me tomorrow. And he was the acquisitions editor for a library-based publisher, 5-star. And so I went up and talked to him and he said, send me the manuscript. And they said they were interested. I wasn't sure I wanted to go with something with that narrow a focus, but I did hunt for I got an agent based on that. And that was another mistake. We finally parted company. The only thing the agent did for me was get my rejections faster and nicer. And she couldn't sell anything. So the e-publishing worked, and then Amazon showed up. And Jay Conrath had said, whoa, look at this new platform. You got a book, you can put it up for 99 cents and make millions. Well, maybe if you're Jay Conrath, but not if you're Terry Odell. But I did put the book up because I'd just gotten the rights back to that first 5-star book, which is When Danger Calls. And that's where I started with Amazon and moved along as Barnes & Noble came up with an imprint, Apple Books, Kobo showed up. So there were a whole lot more places that I could publish my work.
So let's talk about traditional publishing versus, how would you term this? Is this indie publishing that you're talking about?
Yeah.
So
I'm an independent publisher.
Okay, so you publish your own books, but they're not quite self-published.
Yeah, they are.
Or is that how you would term them?
I am the publisher. I mean, if you go look at them, because I distribute through other channels, they go, well, we're going to show up, this is going to say it's a Smashwords book, or it's a Kindle book, or it's a this book. But the publisher is me. I put my name down. I thought about it when I was first starting. I said, do I want to, call it some kind of publishing company? And there was time and paperwork and money involved, and I didn't know if it was going to work. So no, you can just put your own name up there. I'm the publisher. And I have found that if I see something and I go, I've never heard of this publisher, and I look it up, it's like, yeah, they publish their own books, period. To me, that's self-publishing. You've got an imprint and it doesn't say Terry Odell, it says, TLC Publishing. But it's no different. It's just harder. And I always take the lazy way out. I will confess to that. And as far as going traditional at this point, I'm too old. I mean, I know a lot of the focus is trying to get the agent and trying to get published and having that, books in the brick and mortar store. That's not my goal anymore. It's just not. By the time I would get an agent who would shop it around and then it would get on the publisher's schedule and then get published, I'm not sure I'll be alive.
On that cheerful note.
Well, no, it's cheerful because it gives me the freedom to say, I'm going to publish a book now.
Yeah. You have obviously been very successful. I'm looking at your website and it lists for each series how many places it is. I don't know if the term would be available or published or what, but
So what is the key to success, to your success in independent publishing? And the numbers that you see, and if you go to a writing conference, you're going to have people who throw these at you. The numbers of books published has skyrocketed
Mhm.
over since the ability to self-publish ebooks. But on the other hand, if you look at the numbers of average sales for those self-published books, they have they've decreased a lot. I think they tell you that the average self-published book sells like 6 copies or something.
Um,
So how do you cut through all those millions that people are putting out there, many of which, and I'm not trying to, many of which are trash.
oh, I
They're
agree.
absolute garbage. On the
Yeah.
other hand, some of them, I like to think mine are among them, are are well written and they're very good books. But how do you get through the noise? How do you successfully do this?
Well, part of it is luck. I mean, first off, you have to have a good product. And if you don't, just because you can publish doesn't mean you should publish. And that's the danger of it being so easy to hit that button and say upload, and it's not good. I pay an editor. I hire an independent editor. She happens to be the same person who edited my 5-star books. She quit that. I did have to, I think 2 of my books I had to find other editors for, but then she came back and was taking freelance clients. And so I'm familiar with her and I'm comfortable with her and she knows my work, and it's that step to quality. I know that
Not to interrupt your train of
Sure.
thought with this, but I'm sure people are in our group are watching this and going, well, how much does that cost? I'm not asking for your financial statement here, but how much, if somebody wants to hire an editor to go through their book, how much should they be expecting to pay and what range?
I would say if you're looking for quality, I mean, I think there's people who go to Fiverr and find, somebody will do it for $300. I wouldn't trust that. I pay in the neighborhood of 1,000. Some charge by the word. And I had looked when my editor was busy and I had the British Isles book, I went to a editorial website or whatever where they have a stable of editors and you submit a chapter and the editors read it. And if one of them likes it, they email you back. And I had about 4 or 5 interested, and the rates ran from a penny a page to 4 cents. I mean, a penny a word to 4 cents a word. So it will vary, but yeah, you really do have to. I was lucky that when I got the rights back to my Cared One books, they had already been edited. Not all that well, but I knew enough that I could go back and reread them and make a few adjustments. But I knew that I wasn't ashamed to have my name on them. And then when I started with 5-star and I went with Brittany, and I've been with her for almost everything else. But yes, it was something that I can't afford this until I'm making money. But the other side is you really can't afford not to. Because if your book bombs because it's poorly edited, poorly written, whatever, that's the end. No, I'm not going to buy a second book from you if I read it and it's full of typos and your point of view hops all over the place and your continuity is off and it's, just sloppy. So if you're committed to this as a career, then you're going to have to invest. I also invest in cover art. I don't have the skills to do it. And a lot of that is genre. But and
So
some of it
do you having seen some of your covers, do you personally choose the male models that are on the covers, or
the way she works, my first few, I had found somebody, I think it was Barry Eisler, said, "Hey, look, I've got this friend and he's out in the cover business and he's reasonable and he'll work with you." And Dave worked with you for, you say, "Well, could you move the title down about a quarter of an inch?" And he'd say, "Sure." And he would go back and do it. Nowadays, it's like, you got 3 shots. I'll send you 3. After that, you start paying again. The way Kim works is you find the cover art that you want for branding. I found that my Blackthorn books were not representative of what they were. I got a lot of complaints that the action type covers I had didn't indicate that they were romances, and people were saying, "Hey, there's mush in this, there's stuff in this." Anything from, there's kissing to there's porn for the same scene. So I went back and I found pictures of hunky guys and we changed the covers. With my Pine Hills books, they also did not show people on the cover, and readers wanted to know the book was about people, not about a place. So I went back and redid those. But yeah, I spend way too much time trying to find pictures, especially for the Blackthorn books. It's even worse for the Pine Hills because the brand has established that there will be a couple. And the same with the cowboy books with the Triple D. And that's another thing. I want people to look at my book and recognize it and say, "Oh, that's one of Terry's books." So they're all connected through fonts, and the different series have their own little connection things.
So again, back to the question I'm sure people who are listening have rough idea of what it takes to hire somebody to do a cover for the book or arrange.
Oh, pricing?
Yeah.
They're all different. You can go. I use the Killian group. She does a lot of romance, but she does mysteries too. And her prices are on her website. I think it's in the 300-ish. And a lot depends too. If you're going to do an ebook, a print book, and an audio book, and then they have a service where they'll help you with your back cover copy. The more you do, they often will discount it. But yeah, you can probably, I would set aside $2,000 if I was doing it.
So we've gotten through the cover, we've gotten through the editing. So how do you break through the noise and all the volume of self-published books and all of that and build your own brand? Because clearly you have done that.
It started out pretty much by luck. And again, this was a good number of years ago. I was independently published. There was a group I belonged to. I don't know. I don't think it was a Sisters in Crime. It might have been a romance writers online group that said, "Barnes & Noble has this new thing called Nook First, and they're opening it up to independent authors." And it was their competition for KDP Select. And instead of a 90-day commitment to exclusivity, it was 30 days. And I happened to have met the person in charge of this at a conference, which is always your open. She'd have no idea, who I was. But I could open my query letter with, "We met at the Sunshine State conference, and it was my first conference for writing, and you were so very helpful, and I really like it. And I see you have this program, and I have a book." And they accepted it. And they put mega time and effort into it. And my husband hollers out, "Hey, I just got an email from Barnes & Noble. They told me to buy your book." And my former daughter-in-law said, "Somebody at work came up to me and said, 'Are you related to this person?'" They basically put it in a special spot on their website, in their store. They emailed everybody who had ever bought one of your books, and they sent a blanket email out to like what's new. That was the year I had to hire an accountant, and I had to give back all my well, not all, but most of my Social Security. if you're going to have a windfall, be 66, not 65. Because I made $20,000 that month.
Yeah.
And I then had a name and I had something I could do and people recognized it. And I could thumb my nose at all these people with Kindles that said, well, how come I can't get your book? And I gave them the same answer they'd been giving me. Just wait, but not 90 days, wait 30 days, and then you can. And I believe in going wide. I won't put all my eggs in one basket. It's a matter of principle, but I'm the kind of person who back in the day when there were multitudinous sites where people bought ebooks, there was no Amazon really. People were buying them from independent ebook publishers. And somebody said, I buy my books at All Romance eBooks. Is your book there? And my answer to her was, it will be tomorrow. And I went and uploaded it there. If there's a reader out there, I want them. And I know there's other people, and that's up to you. And it's how you make your money, and it's whatever you want to do. But for me, if I'm with Kobo, I got a reader in a place I had never heard of, Bosnia-Herzegovina. I don't even know how to say it, but now I can say I've been there because we took a side trip from the Croatian trip, and I go, somebody in this country bought one of my books. So I just like, that shampoo ad, and they tell a friend and they tell a friend and they tell a friend, and word of mouth is your best advertising.
Okay, and obviously that speaks to the quality of your books, because you can't build that word of mouth if people don't like it.
Exactly. Or the word of mouth is going to be, stay away from this. It's a piece of crap.
Yeah. So how have you maintained, and I know you have a presence on social media, you have a really well done website. So do you have mailing lists? How do you build that base and keep that base of readers?
Okay. The first piece of, I don't know if I'm in a position to give advice, but what works for me is to remember that social media is social. And the more it turns into advertising, the less I am there. Went to a conference where the speaker was talking about marketing. And, she says, everybody hold up one finger, so you hold up one finger. She said, that's how many social media sites you should be on. It's this fear of missing out. Well, if I don't have a Facebook, and if I don't have Instagram, and if I don't have, God, I can't even keep up with them now. I got on Twitter because my kids were there, and it was the only way I could find out what they were doing, because they didn't talk to me, but they put stuff on Twitter. And then I could say, why are you talking about wondering if you should go to bed when you have to be at work at 5 a.m? What are you doing? She says, oh, that's, she didn't say work. She came back and said, no, I have to be at work. That's why I have to be somewhere at 5 a.m. And I said, well, what are you doing? And she says, oh, I'm an extra on Game of Thrones. I would never have known that if it wasn't for Twitter. So I'm over there. I don't do as much anymore because, again, everything is buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And well, Steve, you see my Facebook author page.
Yes.
80% should be social. If you've got your audience, they will tolerate you saying, oh, and by the way, I just published this book and I'd like it if you, give it a buy. But we play games. And on my regular Facebook profile is restricted just to people I know well and my family. I've got a lot of quote friends there that are never seeing my posts because I started that back before there were pages. I do some Twitter. I did a lot more. I don't anymore. I used to do Instagram. That's become total advertising. I'm hardly ever there. Don't talk to me about TikTok, but you got to kind of know what your audience is. If you're writing books for the TikTok crowd, then you should have a TikTok presence. If Facebook doesn't have your readers, then don't do it. But I'm too lazy to change now.
So I have to ask you, because everybody's hooked. Oh, so many people are hooked on Wordle. I haven't bought into that one yet. I've stayed away. I eventually will, I'm sure.
I do it.
But I am hooked on your word of the day. How did you come up with that, and why? And and it is just a lot of fun.
That's all. I think I posted it one time, or I'd seen somebody else. I'd seen something about, make up your own definition. And I said, that sounded like fun. And I put up a word on my author page, and I go to dictionary.com and they have a word of the day. I think a lot of dictionary sites have them, but I've just stuck with word of the day. And it's a random word. And
Yes, very random.
yeah. And basically I have a boilerplate in a document where I just change the word and I copy and paste that onto my Facebook page. And I leave it alone. I mean, I'll go back there and I appreciate the people who comment and I respond with a like, but I don't get involved in their thing. And it's gotten to the point where they talk to each other about it and they comment on somebody else's word and all of that. It's 30 seconds in the morning, but that's engagement. Now, whether any of those people have bought any of my books, I don't know.
But
But it's there.
It certainly raises your name recognition.
And that's all it's supposed to do. It takes 7 touches. People have to see your name 7 times before it'll even register. The other thing I used to do on that author page was I would just scroll my newsfeed on Facebook, and if I'd see a meme that I thought was funny, if it made me smile or laugh, I would post it. And that was what I did every day at 6 o'clock. And then Facebook, bless its pointy little head, started saying, we're going to take your page down because you put unsuitable content up. And it was, here I can say it. I couldn't put it, I couldn't repost it and say, do you think this is really bad? But it was a meme for a joke, a hack. You guys all know what a bagel is, right?
Yes.
Okay. A bagel has a hole in the middle. You want to slice a bagel in half. My cousin actually did that one day and went right into her hand. But there was this cute little meme that said, a hack for slicing bagels, stabilize it by putting your finger in the hole. Now, anybody who thought I was serious with that, I mean, it was a cartoon. It wasn't even a real person. And I got this thing that I noticed from Facebook saying, we do not condone talking about self-mutilation and your page is in danger of coming down. And I think my regular profile had something on it that I did something 2 years ago, and they come back and say this is unsuitable. So their little bots drive me crazy. So I don't put up those jokes very much anymore because Facebook doesn't have a sense of humor.
It does not appear to.
No, but yeah, social media, and then your real money is in your mailing list. Because if they take down my Facebook page, I don't know the contact information for the 7,000 people that follow my Facebook page. I have no clue, other than the 3 or 4 that are friends of mine in other circles. If Facebook disappears, those 7,000 people are gone from my life. I have a much smaller newsletter list, but I have the email addresses of every one of those people, and I can put my in that list. Nobody else does. You don't let somebody else, you don't build your castles in somebody else's sandbox. So my newsletter list is mine and mine alone. And it's not all that easy. You get a free read every time somebody signs up. They get an automatic email with a link to a book funnel download. So those are reader magnets, and I use those. Giveaways, contests. I don't send newsletters out all the time. Usually the most is once a month, or if I have something new that I think is worth it. But those are your people. They're there because they want to be.
And you back up that list and back it up and back it up.
Well, you have it, and it's on file with I'm using MailerLite right now, but you can download that anytime you want to and save it.
What is MailerLite?
MailerLite is it's a mailing service. It's a newsletter service.
Emails.
They will email There's another, I use Book Funnel for giving stuff away. And Book Sweeps is another one that has contests basically. And in order to enter, they sign up for your mailing list. So you get names, you'll get a lot of unsubscribes. I mean, you just have to have a rhinoceros hide. They're not leaving because it's you. You know, they're leaving
So
because,
you
go ahead.
have what I think is an absolute great tagline on your website, which is romance with a twist of mystery, and you even have a typographical way of doing the twist, which looks great. How did you come up with that? And not only, I mean, that's the form question, but what are the challenges of writing a blended genre of romance and mystery, and why did you gravitate to that?
I was a mystery reader. I liked mysteries. I thought I was writing a mystery. I sent my daughter chapters and stuff, you know, look what mommy's doing. And they said, Mom, it's a romance. And I'd never read a romance and I didn't like romance. I thought romances were all those Harlequin Garanimal things until I discovered romantic suspense. And I said, this would work because I'm reading the mysteries as much for the relationship between the protagonist and whatever's going on in his life as I am for the crime, maybe even more. And the beauty of being an indie publisher is that readers don't care. They want to read the stories they want to read. And when I've tried to get Deadly Secrets published by a traditional publisher, the comment was, it's either a police procedural or it's a cozy. Make up your mind and resubmit. And I go, well, why should I? I'll just put it out there on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and let the readers decide. And there are a lot of readers who'll say, oh, a police procedural, that's a cozy too. Cool. So I don't have a trouble. The romance with a twist was because I thought I was writing mysteries, but my first publications were romances. So I did that. And then the logo was a gift from my daughter for my birthday one year. She knew a graphics designer. I think she paid him, and he designed that.
It's very cool. I like that one a lot. Any words of advice to somebody who wants to try their hand at blending the genre like romance and mystery? Are there any things to watch out for, or do you just write what you want to write?
Yes to both. There are reader expectations no matter what you're writing. If you write a mystery and the crime isn't solved, I don't think you're going to sell another one. If you write a romance and the couple doesn't get together at the end, you know, I don't go as far as the white picket fence, 2 kids and a dog, because romantic suspenses happen in a very short period of time. And I mean, I had a relatively short courtship. I met my husband in October. We were engaged in February and married in August. And that was considered, you know, really fast to marry somebody with a happily ever after a week where your life has been in danger is just not realistic. And I don't like totally unrealistic things. So you have to know the genre expectations of both and figure out how you can tell the story. But I will bet you that no matter what you think you can, you know, that you're going to write, you can go and go down and search, and you can find lots of other books that are blending both of those. So you'll have a model to go with.
You made a comment that I really like, I identify with. I was, until I canceled out recently, but I made a suggestion on a panel at BoucherCon that they're going to have called Objection, the Law in Fiction and Film. And I've given that presentation myself numerous times because I just have a thing of being a lawyer about things that people who just don't take time to look. I'm not talking about writing a trial procedural book, but where the stuff is just, and I know cops have that, where the police work doesn't make sense. It does, you know, they hate the stories because it's not realistic. So when you're writing fiction, how do you look at that line between, you know, do things have to be realistic? How far does that go? How much do you look at that in your writing?
Oh, very, very, very much. I have contacts in as many fields as I need. If I don't have them, I find them. Right now, I'm writing a Mapleton mystery, and I have a situation where the cop has observed the bad guy. He knows who he is. He sees him set a fire to his house, but the guy gets away, and he's from out of town, and so they have nothing. How do you find this guy? He doesn't live in the same state. You don't know what his credit card, what he holds. You've got no authority. You don't know if he's driving his own car. You haven't seen it. Somebody else says, oh, I saw this dark green sedan pull out of the parking lot and it was suspicious. You can look that up. And I've got a homicide detective, retired consultant, and I've been driving him nuts. He says, well, you look at the credit card records. I said, yeah, but you can't, because you don't know. You can't call American Express and say, does somebody named this have an account with you? Yeah, you've got to have a whole lot more detail. Some of the stuff requires a warrant. A lot of the liberties I take are time-based, so things don't happen that quickly, but you can't fill a book, unless you go. And 6 months later, when they got the results back from the cell phone towers, you have to speed
Yeah.
things up.
Yeah.
But I want it, and the greatest compliment I get is when somebody says, I was a cop for 25 years and I read this book and it nails it.
Really good. One last question. And again, I was intrigued when we had our discussion about this. My understanding is that you differentiate between goals and dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference? What is more important for a writer have? And what goals do you have or dreams do you have for yourself?
Well, for myself at this point, it's pretty much goal based. I mean, a dream is I'm going to make the New York Times bestseller list. And that's a great dream. And if you want to turn it into a goal, you have to say, well, how do I do that? Because I have no control over that. The only way to make the New York Times bestseller list is to what? Sell a whole bunch of books. So how do I sell a whole bunch of books? Well, first you have to write a book. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day until I finish the book. And then I'm going to have it edited, and I'm going to do that. So you take your dream and then you break it down into goals, and these goals have to be measurable. And then that goes back to my teaching days. If you couldn't measure what your students were learning, how do you know what they're learning? Does that answer?
Yeah. So what's next for Terry Odell?
Well, it's this Mapleton book that I'm writing that I have to figure out how they're going to catch this guy if they can't find him.
Okay. Excellent.
But eventually they will.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been a great program, great presentation. And thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
And we will, I think we're at the witching hour of 1 o'clock. So again, thank you so much. Thanks for everybody being with us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Well, you guys too. And it's terryodell.com.
Thanks. And the latest book is?
Cruising Undercover.
Okay. It's a great website to go take a look at. It really
Thank you.
is.
Thank you. And drop by and leave a comment. There's a contact form, and say you were here.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Adios, everybody.
Bye.